You are listening to the fifth story for Clarkesworld Magazine, issue 232 for January 2026. Welcome in, Clarkesworld listeners. I hope this podcast finds you as well as can be. Thank you for your ongoing support, whether it's through a subscription, you've gone to patreon.com/Clarkesworld, or you've checked a few bucks our way via a donation of some sort. Thank you. And if you can't afford it, thank you for spreading the news about Clarkesworld. Thank you for telling a friend about a story. And thank you for getting lost in one yourself. You allow me to keep doing this each and every month, and I cannot thank you enough. Our story is titled Tomorrow's Beautiful Dream and is by Ju Chu, translated by Carmen Yiling Yan. Ju Chu is a rising star in Chinese science fiction. He is a major in machine learning engineering, holding a master's degree in robotics from University of Pennsylvania. He has won several science fiction awards in China. His short stories and scientific articles have been published in Science Fiction World, Science Fiction World Pictorial, Amazing Science, and more. Carmen Yiling Yan was born in China and raised in the United States. Carmen was first driven to translation in high school by the pain of reading really good stories and being unable to share them. Since then, her translations of Chinese science fiction have been published in Clarkesworld, Lightspeed, and Galaxy's Edge, as well as numerous anthologies. She graduated from UCLA with a degree in computer science, but writes more fiction than code these days. She currently lives in the Midwest. So, my dear listener, I hope that you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. The rain fell on Quancheng for 3 days straight, and so for 3 days, Meng Wan was rained on, unfeeling and unaware. 12 hours a day, he dangled off the skyscraper's curtain wall, punching bolt after bolt into the joints. On the fourth morning, Meng Wan hit his bodily limits, and the foreman pulled the transchip from the back of his neck. Soul returned to mortal shell. Meng Wan reclaimed control of his fleshy form. A deposit notification popped up on his contact lens. 3 days, 36 hours, 300 yuan. The foreman cussed him out as a useless good-for-nothing and told him to get lost. Meng Wan limped away. After 3 days of getting rained on, every joint in his body ached as if gnawed by termites. He glanced back at the rain-shrouded skyscraper. Scattered silvery specks flashed across the exterior wall. The androids capered back and forth, indefatigable flies buzzing around a corncob. Motherfucker, can't compete with these clankers. An inspection report popped up on his lens. Meng Wan's 481st bolt was crooked, the join uneven, and needed to be repunched. Penalty? 100 yuan. The account balance in the upper left-hand corner was pared down from 300 to 2. Soul seller Meng Wan went home and exchanged 200 yuan for a couple tubes of bio-repair gel. He first medicated the back of his knees, then smeared his elbows, then swallowed down a bellyful of pills. He lay on the sofa, dozed off for 5 hours, then got up, made food, and started looking for the next gig while he ate. Soul sellers were rare these days. A couple years back, the big companies and construction sites were using soul sellers en masse, squeezing their bodily capabilities to the limits, to the point of quite a few scandalous fatalities. Guangzhou, following the decrees handed down from above, had then implemented strict controls over its soul seller economy. Meng Wan submitted his resume to 30 job sites, then went downstairs for his daily soul seller inspection. "Have you recently received any offers of work from illegal organizations?" the Black Mask asked. "No." "Have you performed any soul seller work for unclear aims and purposes?" the Black Mask asked. "No." The Black Mask changed the subject. "Have you thought it through? I'll just take 10% from your earnings, and after that, you won't have to worry about a thing around here." "Let me think on it some more," Meng Wan said. "Think carefully. The higher-ups are sending inspectors soon. Who knows what new policy they're planning for you soul sellers. If something happens, I can protect you. Yes?" The Black Mask checked his bodily capacity numbers, found that they remained above the danger line, and concluded the interrogation. At the very end, he added, "Right. Once you soul sellers start work, you're totally gone to the world, and they can use your body for all sorts of illegal things. There's a reward for reporting, a full 100,000 yuan. You know that, right?" "I know." 100,000 yuan would pay for an assembly line to churn out some rough and ready androids, enough to make you a bottom-tier foreman and vault you up one economic class. That was the dream of all soul sellers. They worked 10-plus hours every day in a dead stupor, selling their bodies at bargain bin prices to amoral corporations, perhaps for none other than the possibility that one day they'd run into a corpse to use them for illegal work. Meng Wan idly wandered around for a while, but then some of the beat cops were starting to pay notice. To avoid their surveilling gazes and any additional trouble they might bring him, he meekly turned back around. This was Quanchen's low-income district, where the bottom-most class of society congregated, including all the soul sellers. This was the most unstable, quivering sector beneath Quancheng's immaculate exterior. Dedicated forces policed here year-round, watching over the legally sanctioned desperados that were soul sellers. Meng Wan had returned home when he received the invitation to interview with an organization called Tomorrow's Beautiful Dream. Tomorrow morning, East Quancheng, at the Chaosian Gate. Someone will be there to pick you up. He looked at his medicated bits. They were just about done absorbing. His arms and legs no longer hurt. Thank goodness for modern biotech. As long as soul sellers didn't overclock themselves for extended periods of time while entranced, a few tubes of gel were enough for deep repair, ensuring their longevity. He ought to be fine tomorrow. Meng Wan accepted the interview and lay down to rest, looking forward to being good as new tomorrow morning. Meng Wan folded his umbrella. He stood beneath the arch of the Chaosian Gate, sheltered from the pouring rain. He stood for an hour. Just as he was reaching the limits of his patience, a capsule bus suddenly touched down in front of the arch. The bus rolled down a window and a shouting voice pierced the rain. "You're here for the interview." Meng Wan nodded. The bus door opened. Gripping his umbrella, he leaped aboard. On the bus were a gaggle of soul sellers like him. They looked checked out, their eyelids heavy, as if they'd been riding the bus for a while. When the bus door opened, a few craned their heads to look out and sniff at the humid rain, before tranquilly closing their eyes once more, waiting for their soon-to-be employer to take them to tomorrow's beautiful dream. The glass in the passenger compartment was pitch black, obscuring anything outside. Meng Wan wasn't sure what route the bus was taking or how long it traveled. All he remembered was that they picked up another 4 or 5 people on the way. He sat leaning against the sides, rubbing in the last batch of medication, planning to take the chance to sleep a little more and let his body recover better. As they approached the ground, he whiffed the damp green smell of the rain and mud clinging to the bottoms of everyone's shoes. He recalled his start in the trade the first time he worked as a soul seller. That had also been outdoors work, and in the middle of a downpour, too. He stared dumbly at the abyssally black hole in the grassy field, from which emerged a fishy stench of decay. Mud water welled out of the hole, carrying every sort of filth. He cried out and dodged a big step back. His shifu had swatted him about the head and sworn at him. "What are you hiding for? You'll be bathing in that stuff pretty soon." He tried to run, but his shifu dragged him back. "Do you want to earn big money or not?" "I want to, but not by doing this." "What you'll do if not this?" His shifu gave him the evil eye, even as he laughed it off with the foreman. "It's his first time. Cut him some slack." The foreman hawked phlegm into the hole. "Well, if he can do it, do it. If you can't, hurry up and get lost. If I'd known earlier, I'd have hired a machine." Hey, we're cheap. We're cheap." His shifu was smiling so hard his face threatened to crack open, rainwater squeezing out from the creases. Meng Wan thought for a while, couldn't come up with an answer, gritted his teeth, covered his nose and mouth, swore, "Fuck the clankers," and jumped in. The foreman inserted the transchip into the back of his neck. The work instructions were all encoded on there. Today's work was simple. Bend and squat down in the dirty water and scoop up the trash that had been carried from upstream, ensuring that it didn't clog up the drains. The next time he opened his eyes, the rain had stopped, and the 100 yuan was in his account. A mountain of garbage stood piled outside the hole. The moment his sense of smell returned, his sinuses flooded with the stench that covered him. His shifu praised him for his gumption, the foreman received praise from above, and the upper city volunteer event thus concluded successfully. They could now proceed to hurriedly upgrade Quancheng's sewer system. His shifu treated him to 3 oceanic bowls of hand-torn noodles that night and told him that this was nothing. The real hardcore soul sellers would overclock and earn him even more money, buy better supplements and gels to recover their bodies, keep overclocking, keep earning more money, a rolling snowball of incoming cash. But this was like walking a tightrope. You had to have good luck and charge forward in one go. The slightest misstep in the process and you would fall and die. Later on, his shifu died while overclocking. Meng Wan had taken just one shift at the place where his shifu worked, using a grind wheel to sharpen drill bits. It was inhuman work. Their masks couldn't keep out the flying dust, and their lungs could only endure 5 hours at a time. When he was done, he'd pulled out of entrancement, coughing as he left the grinding room. He'd looked back, seeing the row of soul sellers with heads bent, still grinding away. They'd arrived before him, and they would leave after him. His shifu was in the row. The grinding wheel scraped a long trail of sparks from each drill bit, reflecting in miniature in his shifu's eyes. He was in overclock mode, working madly away as if memorized. It was his shifu's last time soul selling. He died of acute emphysema. They'd arrived at tomorrow's beautiful dream. The receptionist lady at the front desk took them to a large hall where they sat and waited for their number. Those whose numbers were called would get up and walk into a row of little rooms at the front. Meng Wan's turn came. He walked into the little room. The interviewer had him sit and asked him in a ponderous voice. How many years experience? 3 years. Have you overclocked before? No. Are you afraid to? No. Meng Wan thought for a bit, then said, I just don't want to. He remembered looking back as he left the grinding room, seeing his shifu in his obsessive hunch. Are you willing to overclock? What do you do here? Meng Wan returned. We have many categories of work, the interviewer asked again. Are you willing to overclock? Meng Wan hesitated, then said, Yes. No matter what the interviewer asks you, you first answer yes and then see what happens. Meng Wan was deeply acquainted with this law of job seeking. He'd had companies ask him this before, usually. It was only a rote formality. The interviewer opened the other door, leading him out of the small room and into a long, narrow passageway. The corridor was very long, with signs jutting from either wall reading cargo transport, electrical inspection, pipe maintenance, and so on. The 2 dense rows of room signs extended to the very end of the corridor. Meng Wan, gazing into the distance, felt as if he were standing beneath the belly of an enormous centipede. Every sign, a leg. The interviewer chose a room labeled Microscopic Inspection and took Meng Wan inside. There was a table there, and on it, a scanning tunnel microscope. A conveyor belt ran below, arrayed with endless metal samples. The job involves identifying defects in metal samples according to certain criteria. The precise characteristics of the defects are quite complicated, and AI software for the task would cost several million. By our calculations, it would be considerably cheaper to hire soul sellers. The interviewer invited Meng Wan to sit at the workstation. What's your average blink rate while entranced? 12 blinks per minute. The interviewer pursed his lips, making a note on his tablet as if not entirely satisfied. How often do you drink water? Once every 3 hours. He made another note, again seeming dissatisfied. How long can you maintain a forward bend at the waist at 30 degrees? 1 hour. 45 degrees? 40 minutes. 90 degrees? 20 minutes. He asked for a whole series of physical activity stats, and Meng Wan answered one after the other. At the end, the interviewer took out a trance chip and explained the general workflow to him. It was very simple, just a matter of visually identifying the relevant characteristics. The chip contained recognition algorithms and would actually connect to the nervous system. The interviewer allowed him to first try out the work manually. This already counted as part of his paid work, 50 yuan an hour. The money was very appealing. Meng Wan agreed without a thought. A click came from behind his neck, a chip snapping into place. His head jounced forward heavily, as if he'd leaped from a cliff and his face had hit water, and he briefly drowned in the water of a dream. It hurts. He tipped over and fell from his chair. Oh, it hurts. It felt as if the depth of his brain meat had been prodded with a burning brand. He attempted to trace the source of the pain and followed the burning sensation to his eyes. Some region of the nervous connection between his eyeballs and his brain had been heated red hot. He blinked innumerable times before he could make out the time displayed in his contact lens. He'd been entranced for 15 hours. The monitoring graph showed him that, while entranced, he'd blinked 5 times a minute, drank water once every 5 hours, and spent 15 continuous hours bent over at 30 degrees in front of the microscope. The interviewer came in, and the guard accompanying him helped him up. "Congratulations. You've just experienced the first overclocked session of your career." Meng Wan threw a fist at him, but struck only empty air, and he overbalanced onto the ground once more. A notification appeared in his contact lens. 750 yuan had been deposited in his account. He looked at the number in disbelief. He'd never earned this much money in a day. "Apply the meds once you're home. Consider it an employment perk." The interviewer tossed down a pouch and instructed the guard to take him away. "Report for work tomorrow morning at 8. We're doing a rush order, so don't be late. In addition, due to our manufacturer client's need for secrecy, you'll only be performing this task for the next 10 days. After 10 days, you'll be rotated to a different position." Meng Wan felt as if he'd picked up treasure off the sidewalk. That night, he applied the eye ointment the company had given him, then swallowed a few pills to soothe his optic nerves. When he went downstairs for the routine inspection, he went with a swagger in his step. The Black Mask tossed out question after question as per routine. "Have you recently received any offers of work from illegal organizations?" "No." "Have you performed any soul seller work for unclear aims and purposes?" "No." "Have you?" "No." "Have you?" "No." "Have you?" "No." Meng Wan shook his head like a rattle drum. The Black Mask told him to get lost. As Meng Wan turned to leave, he heard the Black Mask cussing out soul sellers behind his back. Sold out all their brains, like drug addicts. Ticking time bombs waiting to go crazy. Meng Wan strolled through the streets with a skip in his step, stopping to say hi here, butting into a conversation there. His strange behavior made people look askance, and eventually attracted 3 of the cops on patrol. "Don't go wandering the streets in the middle of the night like you've got nothing better to do. The higher-ups are sending inspectors soon, so piss off and go home." They stretched out a big electro net between them as they approached Meng Wan, taking him for another soul seller gone out of his mind. At 12 in the morning, Meng Wan, flexing his shock-numbered arm, went to bed still cursing. When he became rich, he mumbled, he'd make all those people his underlings and slap them around morning, noon, and night. He worked for 10 days, 15 hours each day, each time overclocked, each time using the company's miracle drugs after work, recovering good as new by the next morning. Meng Wan felt like one of the self-repairing androids, endowed with bones of iron and guts of steel, invincible and invulnerable, not a thought in his head but working and earning money. He realized the enormous benefit to overclocking and began to think that his Shifu's ill-fated overclocking had just been his bad luck. He even summed together a philosophy of overclocking to treat one's body as the purest kind of tool, cultivating a sense of self-sacrificial pathos. On the 11th day, the process lead came to organize the changing of the shifts. Meng Wan left microscopic inspection, where he'd been for the past 10 days, for manual assembly. This was a big, spacious factory floor that had him and the other 53 workers standing on either side of an assembly line. He was familiar with the general workflow, screwing in a component with a fixed, specific rotation of the wrist. The movement was simple, but it exerted relatively high strain on the joint. He took the associated trans chip and slapped it into the back of his neck without a word. He could insert the chip himself. Meng Wan was already a veteran of the business of soul selling. His forearms burned as if someone had taken a knife, slit him open from pectoral down to wrist, and then sprinkled hot pepper into the crevice. He jiggled his shoulders and desperately flailed about his arms to loosen them. A new pouch of meds landed in front of him. The supervisor said that he was new to this task and not yet acclimated. He ought to go home, apply the meds, and get a good night's sleep. A few more runs, and he'd get used to it. He persisted for 3 days, but his condition only worsened. He tried to get the higher-ups to send him his activity data from when he was overclocked. Previously, there was a process through which he could see them. So why couldn't he see them now? The higher-ups claimed that they were busy, that their work timeline was too tight for them to pay mind to such details. Meng Wan, unable to request his data, gritted his teeth and kept working for another 3 days. He was feeling worse, his arms recovering less and less adequately, but his savings were only growing. He'd never been so rich in his life. Have you recently received any offers of work from illegal organizations? The Black Mask was watching him closely as he went through the usual questions. Meng Wan could practically see the eyes behind that mask, regarding him with amusement, as if saying, "Be honest, what did you find?" He wasn't answering. The Black Mask patted his shoulder, and he came to, hurriedly, saying no. Have you performed any soul seller work for unclear aims and purposes? No. Are you sure? The Black Mask asked, skeptically. What's with you? You're barely paying attention. Why do you look so terrible? I haven't been sleeping well. It's nothing. It looks to me like you've sold yourself, silly. Quit the trade already, okay? If you scramble your brains and get yourself locked up by the cops, I'll get into trouble, too. The Black Mask gave him a little kick. Meng Wan internally muttered, What am I? Your dad? If I stop working, will you take care of me? He half-assedly finished out the interview and left the checkpoint. The Black Mask yelled after him, Remember, there's a reward for reporting. 100,000 yuan. 100,000! The Black Mask's voice echoed in the narrow streetway, faded, wormed deep into Meng Wan's heart. A sort of temptation. Once Meng Wan finished applying and swallowing the various company-supplied meds, he lay down on the sofa and prepared to sleep, staring into the night outside the window. But the neon lights of the upper city scribbled garishly over his dreams, and he found himself unable to stay asleep. He ambled downstairs, slippers slapping, to the checkpoint the Black Mask was at. His shift was reaching its end. Only a few soul sellers were there waiting in line. He hesitated, then quickly strode in, taking his place at the end of the line. His head was dim and insensate, his arms so painful that there was no comfortable way to arrange them. What if there really wasn't anything shady going on? It wasn't easy to find work that paid this well. If he reported and lost the job, what then? He turned, thinking to leave. The twist of his torso made his arms throb for what seemed like ages, and he came to a stop once more. If he kept overclocking like this, he was going to wreck his body sooner or later. Hey, we've been watching you for several days now, and all you've done is act shifty. Come and do a psych test. 3 other patrol cops surrounded him. The Black Mask noticed Meng Wan at the end of the line and said, Didn't you come by already? Why are you here again? The patrol cops looked at the Black Mask, then back to Meng Wan. Everyone awaited his answer. Have you got something to say or not? The Black Mask stepped out of the checkpoint, menacing closer. If you've got shit to say, then say it. It's almost the end of my shift. Meng Wan gave a bashful smile and held up his hands, palms out, offering the Black Mask his contrition. I wasn't in the best state of mind during the routine interview. I was blowing you off a little, and I was worried I offended you. So I came downstairs to apologize. The Black Mask waved a hand for the cops to relax. He came over, slung an arm around Meng Wan's shoulder. Finally thought it through. Without my protection, soul sellers like you are going to have a bad time in this dank little corner of town. Not to mention, you soul sellers are in a touchy societal position. Even if the powers that be didn't approve the last batch of soul selling applications, there's still a whole lot of soul sellers still active. If they get out of control, Guangcheng's going to descend into chaos, you know. Meng Wan was preoccupied, still thinking of the business with tomorrow's beautiful dream. The higher-ups are sending people in a few days, a whole lot of people, most likely with policies in mind. Work with me and I can at least keep you safe. How about it? The Black Mask nudged. Meng Wan nodded distractedly. The Black Mask, delighted, accessed the Soul Seller's management system and brought up Meng Wan's earnings. He stared. He looked at Meng Wan's faintly trembling arms and immediately understood. Hey, you overclocked, he said. Then you won't mind if I take 20%, right? You're now in the upper crust of soul sellers. Meng Huan gestured in front of his contact lens. His arm was too sore. He had to try 5 times before he made the right gesture, routing 1,000 yuan over to the black mask. In bed, he tossed and turned, thinking of his Shifu, thinking of the first time he climbed into the sewers, thinking of the neon lights of the upper city. He felt that as long as he could endure, as long as he crawled through enough sewers, he'd one day save up 100,000, pay for a small factory, and move to the upper city. Looking at his current rate while overclocking, he needed another month or so to hit 100,000, but he didn't think his body could even last another 3 days. His only hope was that this tomorrow's beautiful dream qualified as an illegal organization. If he successfully reported it, that would be 100,000 right in the bag. That was why he tried to secure good relations with the Black Mask. Within 3 days, before his body gave out, he needed bulletproof evidence. Meng Huan's arms ached all throughout the night, and he pondered all throughout the night as well. Once the sky lightened, he got a spring with a timer from the mechanic shop, embedded it deep into the chip slot in the back of his neck, and went to clock into work. This was the last day of manual assembly. He followed the designated worker passageway to his place, and the others gradually trickled in as well. Meng Huan quietly asked the person in front of him if he knew what they were making. The man said, "Some kind of industrial equipment, right? Look at these components." "Then why not use androids?" the man on the other side of the conveyor belt interjected. "Why would a company this big care about saving a few cents? Saving costs, boosting efficiency. Why wouldn't they save money where they can?" "The way I see it, they're building something illegal. I bet it's some kind of weapon," the man on the other side said, a gleam in his eyes. "Time to work! Time to work!" the person in front shouted. The component gates rose, the conveyor belt began to move, and the red and yellow lights at each worker position lit up in unison. The factory was waking up. It was time for them to go to sleep. Pa, pa, pa. The crisp sounds of palms slapping backs of necks came in a wave, as if it too were being carried by the conveyor belt, upstream to downstream. The soul sellers inserted their chips one after the other, entering entrancement. Pa! Meng Huan, too, slapped the chip into the back of his neck. His vision darkened, and the bone-gnawing pain in his arms disappeared as well. When he could next make out light and shadow, he found the floor rushing toward him. With an effort, he spread his stance for stability, hands grabbing for the nearest support, and he managed to get his weight under him again. The timed spring had worked, ejecting the chip after 8 hours. Meng Huan pretended to still be screwing in components, scanning his surroundings out of the corner of his eye. The supervisors had all left. All his coworkers stood like stiff tree trunks around him, eyes lightless, hands in busy motion, without a hint of wasted action or extraneous pause. They were like flowing water, sweeping component after component off the current. The muscles in their forearms twitched and bobbed. Even the extension and contraction of their muscles were identical. Meng Huan left his post, following the conveyor belt downstream. He reached the end of the room where the conveyor belt passed through component gates into the next room. Meng Huan vaulted onto the belt, thinking to follow the work pieces to the next stage. He lay on his stomach in the dark tunnel. As the conveyor belt turned and twisted, he lost all sense of direction and no longer had the faintest clue of where he'd started. Light tore a gap in the endless pitch black in front of him. He heard the clang of metal against metal. The bright opening pulled wider and wider a mouth of light, through which the conveyor belt extended like a rough-textured tongue, and Meng Huan was like a fly stuck to it, about to be swallowed into this broadening, eye-watering mouth. He passed through the mouth. The light forced him to squint his eyes shut for quite some time. Once he grew accustomed and could open his eyes, he discovered that he was in a big work hall, similar to manual assembly, containing several massive assembly lines with soul sellers densely packed on either side, busying away in unison. Did I travel in a circle? Meng Huan wondered. No. Wait. He noticed what these workers were doing. They were disassembling every component that passed by them, unscrewing, separating, removing. Every task that Meng Huan did in manual assembly, the people in this room were doing the exact opposite. Add 100, subtract 100, and you got 0. Meng Huan thought of something. He jumped off the conveyor belt and followed its course, ran to the end of the room and jumped back on. He passed through the gates and into the darkness. Accompanied by the rubbing of conveyor drums and the rumble of machines, he traveled for a similar length of time before light appeared once more. He had returned to manual assembly. We were doing pointless, busy work. We didn't manufacture anything. There are no work pieces needing processing here. Meng Wan slumped to sit on the floor, his brain in a muddle. He thought of something else. He got up and raced out of the room, groping toward his first workplace, microscopic inspection. He ignored the inspector currently at work there. He snatched up a metal sample from the conveyor belt, grabbed a nearby screwdriver, scored a long scratch along the surface of the metal, and set the sample back onto the conveyor belt. He watched it reach the workstation, receive the inspector's attention, and flow away once more, disappearing toward the far end of the conveyor belt. A minute passed. Meng Wan watched the samples arriving upstream. 2 minutes passed. His gaze didn't waver. 3 minutes passed, and a metal sample came into his field of view. Upon it was the scratch he'd just made. The sample continued toward the workstation, where it received a second inspection. Meng Wan felt as if his head were bursting. His arms once again surfaced a nerve pain like being electrocuted. He leaned against the corner of the room, closing his eyes. He didn't understand what was going on. There was nothing illegal, but there was also no value. They were huffing and puffing in a vacuum. There were no products or work pieces being created here. He was so exhausted, he fell asleep. When he next woke, he felt more alert. He thought he must have only napped for a short while, and that he would return to his work position and finish out the day. He took a few steps before realizing something was wrong. The time. He looked at the clock in the upper right-hand corner of his contact lens. 10 hours had passed. This workday had lasted for nearly 20 hours, not the normal 15. The sound of urgent footsteps came from the hallway. Several people were coming. Meng Wan hid behind the door. "How long has it been?" one of them asked. 19 hours and 38 minutes. "How goes the overclocking?" "All workpieces are nominal. The transchips we designed seem to be working as intended to keep the workpieces' nervous and muscular systems below system failure levels." The voices moved further away. 2 words echoed inside Meng Wan's head. Workpieces. His ears rang as if a hummingbird had dived through his left ear, shrieked, and died. Workpieces. The workpieces weren't the components their hands manipulated or the samples they inspected. The workpieces were the soul sellers like him. They weren't processing the components were processing them, refining them, forging them. Amid Meng Wan's shock, he suddenly felt his good fortune. Thank goodness he'd woken up and heard all this. This had to be illegal, right? He was certain it was illegal. Tomorrow's beautiful dream was illegally overworking soul sellers, pushing the duration and degree of overclocking without regard for their well-being, for the sole purpose of developing more advanced transchips to better exploit soul sellers like him. Full of righteousness, he snuck out through a side door. For the sake of saving money, he didn't call for a personal transport capsule, but instead ran back to the low-income district on foot. Wheezing every 3 steps, stumbling every 5, he waded through the muddy fields on the city outskirts, crossed the shanty towns, and ran toward the skyscrapers at the heart of Quanzhou. Gazing in the direction of the skyscrapers of the upper city, he only had to shift his eyes a few inches down to the darkly glinting buildings at the margins of the district. That was the low-income district where he lived. He was used to using the skyscrapers of the upper city as his visual reference for going home, even if every day he went home to the aging low-rises. He tripped several times, scrambling up each time covered in mud to continue to run toward the distant neon glow. He felt as if, this time, he were really headed to that place of neon. It was as if his home, his future home, were right there. 100,000 yuan. The 100,000 yuan was practically in the bag, a small manufacturing line, a few clankers. All he had to do was put his feet up and wait to count the money. His Shifu's dream, the dream of countless soul sellers, was his to make reality. He ran back to the low-income district, making a beeline for the checkpoint where the black mask would be. But there was no one inside. Where is he? Where's the black mask? Meng Wan shouted, bellowed, scouring long lanes and brief alleyways. The low-income district seemed out of sorts today. There were hardly any people on the streets, and every door was shut solemnly, as if awaiting some kind of inspection. He saw the Black Mask. He and a bunch of patrol cops were gathered, bowing and scraping around several important-looking middle-aged people in Western suits and ties. Meng Wan paid no mind to the suits. All he registered was the Black Mask. He ran, stumbling over. Yes. That's an excellent proposal. It not only resolves the issue of stability, but also gives a modest boost to production capabilities. Truly, it's brilliant. Brilliant! The Black Mask flattered skillfully with an ingratiating smile. He had eyes only for the suits and not Meng Wan, rushing over. I want to make a report. Meng Wan passionately grabbed the Black Mask by the shoulders. The patrol cops pulled Meng Wan away. For a moment, the Black Mask seemed at a loss, but he quickly recovered. Report? What do you mean, report? I've told you, stop hankering after the 100,000 yuan. The thought of money's made you crazy. This is the 5th time you've tried to make a report this week. The Black Mask turned to the suits with a laugh. See, this is an example right here. The soul sellers have sold themselves crazy. They really do need a firm hand. It's been years since anyone's broken the law in my precinct. There's too many of these soul sellers who think they can get rich off reporting. You need several a month. This one's perfect for sending over, the leader of the suit said to his secretary. The secretary nodded and injected Meng Wan with a tranquilizer. His eyelids grew heavy. Darkness descended. It felt as if he were once again lying on that conveyor belt, advancing through the darkness, watching a bright gap tear open. A ray of light pierced through. The gap widened. He went through the bright opening and woke. The bright opening was really his 2 eyelids. He lay in an immense industrial building. Around him were countless cots, each with a sedated person like him lying on it. A figure in a white coat approached, a badge glinting on his chest. Tomorrow's beautiful dream. Hello, Mr. Meng. According to your citizen records, you excel at cargo transport and similar labor. You will therefore be assigned to the docks on the west side of Quansheng, moving small form factor cargo alongside the androids for an overclocked labor period of 20 years. Having started work, you will be returned from entrancement after 20 years to reawaken. The white coat took a moment to swallow and continue. Your overclocked parameters will be as follows. 5 blinks per minute, 1 water intake per 5 hours, 1 food intake per 10 hours, 3 hours of rest per day, 1 round of medication per week. In 20 years, when you awaken, we will deposit 700,000 yuan into your account. Since you'll be in possession of a modest fortune, you won't have to work as a soul seller anymore. With a click, the transchip entered the back of Meng Wan's neck. Accompanying it into his body were 20 years of sleep and darkness. He fell into a dream. He was back again on an even longer conveyor belt, spanning not distance, but 20 years' time. He stared ahead, unblinking. Very soon there would tear open a bright new opening. And this time, the light would be of every color. It would be the neon lights of the upper city. Several 100,000, a medium-scale production line, more clankers, an even better life. As he fell unconscious, he seemed to laugh. 20 years would pass very quickly. As long as he could wake up. This story was originally published in Chinese in Science Fiction World, October 2024. It has been translated and published in cooperation with Storycom and Science Fiction World. And what are your thoughts on the story? You can send me an email. I'm kate@clarkesworldmagazine.com, and that is Clark with an E. We have a few more stories left for you for the month of January. I do hope you'll come back and listen. And until then, my dear listener, I bid you a very fond and hopefully very temporary farewell.